All right, so we are live, and we're going to talk about bringing FRP technology to CanJS. And I guess to just outline, like, the reason why I wanted to talk is just because there's a lot of people who mention this, and also I really want, like, I think there's some, to me, there's some important trade-offs that I want to make sure, like, everybody at least, I think, understands them, and how that we can best, like, if there's a way that we can have the best of all worlds. The trade-off that I see, kind of all independently talked about this together online, is that, so it's like computes and FRP. Like computes, if you change let's say you change a map 5 times, right? Computes can do nothing for you really with that. Like, not elegantly. I'm sure you could make your own compute because you can kind of, with the off and on syntax, you can do really whatever you want there.
I don't know what you mean. When you change a map 5 times, I don't know what you mean by that.
Okay, so let me share my screen so I can kind of do some example stuff here. What I mean is, like, the events themselves, CanCompute doesn't help you with. So let's just say, or even a compute. Let's say I had one compute, and let's just say I had, let's say it was.
You can't really wire a compute to an event elegantly. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, so you can. Yeah, exactly. So computes are all value based. So I could have, let's say I had, like, number of points that a person scored. So I had can compute, and they started with 0 points. Let's say this is player A. Points. And I had player B points. And I can't really do something very easily where if player A scored 2 points in a row, that there's some kind of, like, new derived state from that, without, like, binding on the change event, right? And there's no way. And then you're kind of which Matthew, you can do stuff, and you could have a secondary compute, but then you're kind of effectively changing the value of that secondary compute. There's no way to derive information from, like, the events themselves, only from the data that computes provide.
See, I don't agree with that. I don't think, like, I think a derived compute's fine. That's, like, a compute is the current value of the stuff that it's listed. So I don't think the fact that the value is changing is a bad thing in any way.
Of what, computes?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's a problem,
misunderstood.
but it's a limitation compared to FRP, right? Like, FRP, you can, if these became event streams of just changes, it's easy to say, like, well, you ever play the game NBA Jams?
Played NBA Jam, singular.
Sure, okay. NBA
Was there a Jams? I didn't know there was a Jams. I might get that one.
You go on fire?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so, well, not everybody else might play that game. Basically, in the game, like, if you score enough points in a row compared to everybody else, and you go on fire, and they become, like, superhuman. You can, like, dunk from the 3-point line, stuff like that. There's no way, there's not an elegant way, and what I think what you were kind of talking about yesterday, Matthew, is a way that doesn't involve you kind of manually setting states to derive a on-fire state from these source computes. Because only the value with computes is really something that you can reflect. You can't get that meta information about when that value changes itself with computes.
Yeah.
So
if you care about side effects and not values, computes.
Yeah, if you care exactly. If you care about when things change, how they, like, in relationship to other things, then you're stuck with you're having to do something else, bind yourself manually, update some other compute somewhere else. Where FRP gives you a solution to say like, well, whatever, we can do something with that. So that's the power of FRP, is that it makes it more easily able to do things with the actual events themselves.
Well, I think you're confusing FRP with observables. I don't think they're the same thing.
Event streams. Let's say event streams.
Sure. Okay.
Sure. I'm using the wrong term. Event streams.
Like, I think computes are FRP. They're like a form.
They are. They're a subset.
Yeah.
Of that. I agree. So yeah. So event stream. It's a computes. I guess to restage it. It's about computes and event streams, and a limitation of computes that event streams don't suffer from is that computes are unable to listen to kind of do things based around the events themselves. They only can reflect data, derive new values from other values, but not from like, well, there was two changes in a row within a second, so they're on fire. You can't really do that.
Well, there's all the different compose abilities.
What?
Did you mute yourself?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Do you have headphones in? No?
No?
Oh, there's an echo.
Oh, I can put headphones in if that's a problem.
Well, there was one. No, I don't hear it.
All right, there we go. Phone's on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's good. More generally, I think that, like, anytime you want to, like, computes are good of deriving values from other, we've said this, but they're good at deriving values from other computes. They're not so good whenever you want to do some type of composition of those, like throttling them, that kind of thing. They're not so good there. So it's not just about like what the source of the value of the compute is. It's also, they're not, like, I guess flexible is the only word I could think of. They're not as flexible with how you can create them, I guess. That makes sense.
No. I mean, they're
how would you create
only
a compute that's throttled? Like, how would you do that?
Use batch.
Yeah, that's okay. It's less elegant, right?
Perhaps. I mean, yeah, they're data based, right? Like that's what I'm saying. They don't have their only value, and they reflect the value. You can't do things around the events themselves easily. But that's still, to me, an event kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
It's similar. Based around when the change happens, and you want to do things like that. Yeah, they're less flexible. But yeah, the timing, location of the event, they don't do much with. But the positive thing about computes is that they are much easier to derive value-based values from. The example that I gave in the chat room, which I can kind of share again, let me find that. Like this kind of thing with event streams is tricky to get. You can do it, but it's tricky to get as perfect as compute gets it. This is essentially you have lunch and you have a dinner menu and you have a time of day that can switch between lunch and dinner, and you have a compute that's going to total up either what's in lunch or dinner. And as I think most of you guys know, that the reason why this gets it kind of right is that it's only listening on exactly what it needs to listen to, and you can express it with code and not like a bunch of utility methods based around your event stream library. So what I'm hoping is I do think that there is a place. I absolutely think there's a place for FRP. The issue that I see with it is that what I want to make sure is that once, like this kind of thing, it's hard for me to articulate this, is to me it's nice to have a like a paginate model that has your page, your limit, your offset, and has kind of like next page, these kind of methods like that. Now you might hook up a input element to, you might want to have an input element where a user can type in the new page number. And what you want to do is set up some cool FRP thing to throttle that input element's value changes into an eventual change on the page value, which eventually is going to change the offset. If part of the problem is that you want to avoid ever kind of setting state, or essentially like your application is a sum of just a bunch of events and maybe some initial data, but that initial data is also kind of represented as an event stream itself. How can you build something like that? That it doesn't look like you're somewhere having some event stream, and I haven't used event streams much, but let's say I'm subscribing. This is the eventual stream that input element is creating like new number, and eventually we can avoid something like, even though technically it's kind of the same, but like if this, I don't think it comes with a value, but you can do
it does.
Prop, what is it? The paginate.atter page value. Is there a way to kind of glue? And are there constructs for this already? Is this something we need to explore? Is like, how do you modularize a event stream logic? Because the way that I think they're often architected, or the way that I think about them being architected, is where kind of everything starts at the top, the main application state. But then how do you not deal? I mean, once that's there, how does that not totally consume everything else? And how do you break things down into a modular where, well, okay, I'm getting this stream and I need to pipe that into this other kind of local stream, if that makes sense. Like, how do you have a paginate kind of modeling based around event streams, and then but your root application state is page based, but your paginate is actually operating, its main source data is more based around like offset and limit. How do you build something around offset and limit but connect that? Does that make sense?
What is your paginate?
So let's walk through the example here.
Can I just ask a question? Where would we use FRP in CanJS applications? Why do we need it? I'm not completely clear on that.
I don't think we need it.
I can see it being useful for processing users' actions.
Yes.
But I don't see it as useful for modeling application state. So I'm not sure what are we actually talking about here.
No, I think user actions is exactly where I see its primary value being.
I've never worked on an application that didn't have user actions.
Yeah, but for me, the whole FRP thing should be just a part that in the end spits out the value to the application state. I mean, it can do all the processing before it gets committed to the application state. I don't see why do we even need to build it in. That's why.
I think even with application state, Mikhail, you can occasionally want it with application state. I think the on fire example is actually a really good example of you have state that's determined not from values, but from the order of state changes.
But you could just hook up FRP to a compute change event, probably in some way, and then accumulate in that stream what you want to do, and then change the value of the application state. So for me, it seems that everything where we would use FRP would be pretty much the separate concept that shouldn't be built in directly. Let's put it like that. I don't understand what they're trying to actually integrate into.
Okay, so what I would try to integrate. So yes, the CanFRP that Kat Marchand made already kind of does that. It can produce a stream from a observable or from a compute, and then you can do that. And then yes, you can do this kind of, once you get the value, you can actually set it back on something else. So if I had player A points and B points, I could get a stream from both of these, have another stream that's setting on fire, and I could have like a player on fire compute that would be undefined unless, and then take on the actual player name that was like when the player eventually became on fire, it would set player on fire to that like player's name. But the issue with this, and I think Matthew, I think that people will see this as like a bad thing, the setting of state in this way. They want to kind of express everything is derived from everything else. Now, let me try to give a quick example of where, at least with computes, where a little bit of shifting can make something that seems like you're setting state, but you can change it to having state derived from other state. The best example I can think of this is when you make an AJAX request, like the actual paginate example. A pagination, you might want to know often the total number of pages. And you'll have your count. You'll need your count. But let's say, I'm just going to do a define plugin here. Let's just say this is inside of the define. And I'm going to have limit as something, offset as something. Now these are the source data. But what I might want is actually my data. Oh, hold on. Before I get there, let's say I also want the number of pages. And to do number of pages, I would need to do a getter that was based around the count. So it would do something like the total number of items. So I would need to do something like return this.attr. I'll just not using attr, count divided by this.limit. And I would floor that +1 to get the actual page count. Now, the data, I actually have to make a request often to the server to get some data. So you could do an asynchronous getter that looked something like this. So I had my to-dos or whatever my model. I could do get list, and I could do limit is this.limit, offset is this.offset, and I could do .then. And when this comes back, this is my actual data, but on the data, hopefully you guys kind of know the pattern I'm already talking about, but in case not, it's worth going through. I would do something like self.count equals data.count, and I would also use then I would resolve here. With the data. So that on my paginate model, this.data is going to be my data, and then I'm going to get it set to count. But here you can see that we're setting some state. But if we shift things around a little bit, and let's say instead of data, we make data promise, and this is just returning the promise, and then we can make data just do this dot data promise dot then resolve, and we can do a similar thing with the count. I guess hopefully you can see where I'm going. All I'm trying to get here is that by sometimes setting things up a little differently, you can actually get things so they feel more derived, and you're not so much setting state. You're making it derived from something else. So we're getting a data promise, we're getting the data, and then here we're doing resolve with data.count. My hope is that with a lot of brainstorming, something similar could be done with FRP and computes, so that we could almost have our computes, like instead of setting player on fire here, you've got your subscription, and you can somehow say like, well.
So I guess what is? Oh, sorry.
Right, and then so we never actually have to set player on fire. You have. I guess we kind of have that, right? So you might actually be able to make you might be able to do your event stream stuff.
Yeah, player on fire should be derived from everything.
I think that's how you would do it. And as long as we have that and we can promote that, then that's all right, I suppose. I guess, yeah.
You should the only thing that should ever call subscribe would be like the view later. That should be the only thing that ever calls subscribe.
Yeah.
Actually, that actually shouldn't call subscribe either, because we should be turning them into computes, and then CanViewLive works on computes.
Well, don't you need to call? Like, how does that? Okay, because this will get a compute, which will eventually bind to the event stream if someone's reading player on fire. So, how does this know? How do you maybe Matthew? I don't know if you're more familiar with this. How do you articulate an event stream? Do you always list, like, especially if you want it to change what it's listening to, or can event streams do that easily, like in the way that computes can?
You can change what it's listening to. Well, yeah. Well, I guess maybe I don't understand.
Source streams.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, any particular stream is just going to be like a chain of different, different type of those utility functions. So you change what it listens to by changing that. You know what I mean? Like if you want if you're listening to player A and B, and you want to make it now listen to player C, well, you just change the definition of the event stream.
But how can you write up a quick prototype of what you mean? Because I can't visualize this. You can't pseudocode?
Like usually, like if you want to do things like combine data, like I think the best thing to do is to turn them into computes and then combine them the same with the way that you would combine computes. But
here we need the I guess I'm not exactly sure how this works, because in the same way that like computes work, like just take this example here. And
I don't understand this example. How are we defining player on fire? How do we know?
Okay, let's just say if one of these player A or player B scored 3 points in a row, then player on fire should be like either A or B or something like that, right?
So how do we know if someone's has done 3 points in a row?
Well, we would listen to the.
That's kind of the thing, right? You would basically, oh, what is the syntax exactly? But it's basically along the lines of you'd like player A and player B points, you'd concaten them so that you get the same one. Then you'd have that event stream as an object sort of thing. And you would map that to, and I don't know what the exact syntax is, but it's like map that to, sort of recording the last three, and if they're all the same player, then send off, or map might not be the right word, but then you would then you would continue that stream of a player on fire. So you'd basically compose this stream that is just player on fire events, and all it would be is this player's on fire. Then
Can two players be on fire at the same time?
No.
Right.
No,
so it would
they have to be consecutive.
So those streams would all be together. Like all the players would like basically be concatenated into one stream, and then there'd be some sort of filter or map or whatever you'd want to call it, reduce maybe.
Yeah.
That just totals up the last three or whatever, 3 points, and as soon as that is, then it emits,
Yeah.
not emits, that's not the right word, but like sends the event down the stream that says yes, this player is now on fire. And
Yeah,
so then
true.
you just have
The
that
last two.
variable, and that's what you would subscribe to. Is that?
Yeah, I get that. Like that's yeah, you would build some player on fire stream, and you would eventually probably be able to convert that to a compute, and it would be somehow.
You just have player A stream and player B stream and combine them into one stream probably.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, you combine them.
Yeah. But that's sorry. What I'm getting to is not that. Like I can conceptualize that part. And hopefully you guys too. I don't know what it looks like, but there's always like some kind of combinators and whatnot, and then this produces another stream, and then you want to do some logic, and I don't know. You obviously need to store something. We get that. My question is with event streams is there a way to like add new streams to listen to in the process of, like, if I had another stream that was like players with ball, and or like players were coming in and out on the bench, off the bench, something like that. I don't know. Is there a way to like say, oh, I don't care about this subscription for this stream. So this stream is going to say, okay, I'm listening on this stream now, and now I'm not listening on this sub-dependency stream, and then go back and forth. Is that kind of stuff easily expressed?
I mean, you can combine streams.
But how do I drop
you wouldn't change, and you would never change an existing stream.
You could have a stream of all players
that combines other streams.
You could have a stream of all players, then filter them down to stream of all the players that are in the game.
Yeah.
Then split them into two streams for each team. Blah blah blah.
But then you can have a stream. There's essentially a streams that can, like, how kind of promises, you can return promises inside of them, and then they kind of take on the value of the promise. Essentially, that's what you would need for a stream, is to say, like, well, here's a step where this stream, I'm defining its subscriptions, and then based on those subscriptions, I can do some other things. And then all that, like, all this internal machination still represents itself as an external big super stream. I don't know.
I don't think you would never subscribe. I just don't understand the problem.
I think, unless I'm wrong, like what you're saying, Matthew, is you subscribe when you need the side effects, and that's sort of the end. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. When you want the result, that's the only time you subscribe.
Everything in between there is just like, various asynchronous maps and transforms, and then you subscribe at the end. When you want
I get that, but you need to be able to still define, not at, let's say this is build time, right? Here I'm building a stream, right? I need, during runtime of the stream, someone else is subscribed to the stream, but somehow I need to be able to like switch which streams, the same way that computes.
No, you don't change the stream.
You don't cross the streams. Is that what I'm hearing?
You don't change the stream. Like, they shouldn't be subscribed if they don't care about that. So this is like one of the problems that I'm thinking about as well. Is like, if you're creating a component, it gets all of its own data. It has an input, but then some other component has another input that kind of derive the same data. You know what I mean? Like in regular CanJS, they would have the same. They would be using the same compute, and that's how we would bind those. Like, how do you bind streams, if that makes sense.
That's what I'm getting to. I mean, is this kind of thing basically impossible with streams? I've got to believe that it's not.
No, it's not. It's not impossible. It's just
no. But you're saying it is, because what I'm getting at is well, okay. The reason why I think what you were saying it was impossible is because this is exactly kind of what I'm talking about up here, where the number of I might add items and they might have change events that I need to listen to, but I don't know that. My stream, how do I build a total stream based upon an indeterminate and constantly changing list of lunch items or dinner items?
So the lists of lunch items and dinner items would also be streams. They would be, and then you would have like streams of streams, just like you would have like arrays of arrays. You'd have streams of streams.
But those streams would have to. I guess what I'm getting at is, would those streams have to
exist ahead of time?
With those streams, so this stream is going to have to know when the price changes. So would let's say, okay, so I had a stream of lunch prices, right? Essentially, then I'm subscribing on each individual item here. But let's say I added an item. How does that stream? It's gonna have to listen to not only the price on each. If each of these is a stream, it's gonna have to know. Do you get what I'm saying? If there's something when I add it, when I add let's say I added a. Sorry, let me just try to. I can more clearly state. I have an item stream, and an item stream can have a price event on it. Okay, when it changes. Now, so that's my item stream. Now I need somehow to create a lunch stream that changes whenever somebody adds somehow a new item to lunch, or any of the individual lunch prices change.
I actually think that streams would be a good fit for this. I mean,
okay.
It would make sense if you had a lunch stream and then you push completely a new array of all the lunch items down that stream, and then you get to recompute everything. But working with streams and mutating the data in the stream, that doesn't really make sense. It's in my opinion.
Isn't that kind of what streams do, though?
I mean, basically, when a user clicks on a key or a mouse, you're never going to mutate that event. That event goes down the stream, and then you process it, and that's it. And then you get another event, and you can accumulate those, map those, filter those. But
well, that's kind of how. Yeah, I get that's kind of how what's it called would work.
RX.
Not RX, but what's the
Bacon?
No, React, right? React is gonna or whatever the framework is on top of React. Redux or whatever. You're gonna see sure that maybe there's an event that the price has changed. You're gonna go all the way up to the source of all state, and you're gonna get a basically new copy of the whole state, and then run through all of this logic again. So there would be one stream where essentially event, everything is changed. Now let's derive all values. But
yes.
I've got to imagine that I think we should table this then, just because this one part of the discussion, because I would assume that they have a way of doing this. Because if computes are able to do it, they probably have a way to dynamically say, in the same way that promises kind of can do this, where there's a promise all kind of thing, and you can consume promises within promises. I bet there's a way to say, I make a stream that has dynamic streams that it depends on.
I feel the idea of the flat map on the streams is where that would be solved, because you'd have a stream of price changes, and each of those would be connected to this stream of lunch items, and then there'd be this flat map that happens that you eventually need to total up your prices or whatever. I feel like.
But you'd also have a stream of when you're adding a new adding a new item to lunch or removing an item to lunch.
I think that would be one of those cumulative streams, whatever they're called. It's a date holding stream or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
But we don't have to worry about that because we have computes.
We do. We do. But I
think once you have data, that's a good time to turn it into a compute.
Right, and so I think what Matthew was saying, where the view layer feels like the best place to consume that stream, right? Like you've got your big ball of state in a computer or an object or whatever the hell it is, and then you've got this event stream which you could like map over and reduce and do all this stuff, and then it eventually goes into a view layer of some sort.
Yeah.
And then that view layer also is an observable or whatever that you can subscribe to, and it just returns user events, right? So then you've got this like, you're going to map in your state to the view layer, whatever it is, a component or just the whole template, and then it's going to like, you know, send out user events, and then everything on either side of that can just be observable stuff too. But who cares what's on the other side of it?
Streams make only sense when stuff goes up from the user interaction to the application state. I don't see why.
No, this is to me a really good example of when there is derived state that CanComputes can't deal with.
Yeah, but that's not like, that's still based on user interaction, not on the data that came from the server. That's just data. I don't know
what you mean. You would add a point to the, like, you know, if someone scored a point in some game you were making, that would definitely get sent to the server. And then based upon when the order of those dates, you would be live, you would be on fire or not. I do think that there's a use for it. I mean, what I would like to see is then a way to say, with like the define plugin, like how would you write, you know, player on fire, you know, with being able to read player A points and player B point. Like you would have to somehow get a thing there, like a, I don't know, there'd be some like a event stream, and you would be able to somehow define it, maybe. I don't know. Anybody want to make NBA jams with me? A jam? Sorry.
I was going to say, if you keep saying plural, no. But if you singularize it, maybe.
Is there like, was there a plural, like, I don't know what I'm thinking. Why do I keep saying jams?
Probably was. There's a lot of. I have to look this up.
To the Google machine.
I mean, this could be kind of coolish, as if you could say, hey, I want to define player on fire not with a getter, but I want to say it's an event stream, and then in here I can essentially get the event streams of my siblings, like player A points would be just like an integer, and I can somehow combine that into something. And to me, this is why, like, I like the event stream stuff is really nice, but I do really, really like the ability to like say, hey, here's this player or a game object, and that has some attributes that you can just read. It looks very object-oriented. Some of them are read-only. Some of them you can set, and you can do whatever the hell you want with that. And ways of calculating this stuff within that, I really do believe in object-oriented programming. I know it's not in vogue, but I know it's not in fashion, but it's like conceptually, I just think it is such a convenient way for people to think about things. And
it would be nice if we had a. It would be like, I see the worst thing to me about our view models is like there's all this legacy glut on it. You have to have everything in there. It'd be really cool if we had like a simplified version that was basically only this. It was only gets, nothing else.
Most of the time they kind of are, but
yeah, no, you have to write get. You have to write an object that has a property get that is a function. It'd be nice if you just said.
Well, one thing I thought about is what if just it was like if you had a function here, it just defaulted to
yeah, and get rid of define. don't want to have to write define. Define everything. Why am I writing define?
Yeah, we could. I mean, that we could change in 3.0 and say.
Well, we could put that. We could have a different, not can map, but can compute map or something. Just have a different constructor.
The problem is you still want methods, for sure, on your view models.
Do you? You don't. If you're in an event stream world, you don't. What do you need a method for?
You still need to, like, how do you do something like a model and like a post? Like, how do you do like an update in an event stream world where, okay, player on fire has changed. We have like these things have happened. We need to set some data on the client to the server. I don't know. To me, I guess I can see how you would do it, a different way, but it always seems so weird at that point. Like, if I'm not saying, like, okay, here's the player, they scored a point. I'm not setting player points to 5. I'm like, how do you, okay, then in some ways you're saying is like, how do these things, which are in some ways actual data on the server, how do you not set these things? How do you say, like, how do you, okay, so what Matthew's saying is, like,
Like,
let's say I had a game that I wanted to play, so I restarted. So I loaded that from the server, and players had different points on it. And people can add points to this game for different players. How do you make a game, like, let's say, component that isn't internally setting player A points to increment that to 1?
Well, the definition of player A points would include another stream that is the that represents the update.
Yes, that I get that a little bit. I'd love to see that actually written out to see what that looks like. To me, I feel like that's weird, but I would like to see what that looks like.
Well, it is weird, yeah. I mean, all this stuff is a little weird. So that's why I'm not, like, promoting this. I never had the idea that this should replace the MVVM. This is a thing that a lot of people like.
Yeah,
I guess it's something that no one's, like, really gotten correctly, I don't think, yet. And I think it would be a big win if we were able to figure it out.
Yeah, so I guess I would like to see that someone try that. Like, what does it, especially once you start bringing models in, what does it look like to not actually set a model? Like, how do you even articulate that so that it's going to be, you're going to somehow, you're going to subscribe the events. You're really subscribing to the initial data, and then the root sources of information are your initial game data and somehow the event stream coming off the input element where people can add 1 point to a player. And how does that eventually work its way into, in some ways, actually, the source event stream is actually like which game you're loading, the page is loading, if you think about it. How do you build that into a GET request to get the game? Okay, now we've got the game as initial data. How does that, and then someone adds +1, how does that eventually work its way to a post? And then everything that's subscribing to that data or computes that care about that player's number, how do they all, see stuff?
And more interestingly, because that all actually sounds pretty doable, what happens when it errors, right?
Sure, I don't know. That to me doesn't sound, it sounds doable, but I don't know what that looks like. The problem to me is it becomes, you just have a mess of streams everywhere. I don't know what that would look like. I just we need like a research project where someone like takes a week and like builds this example. Because I'm just wary of a lot of like, I mean, little utilities are really nice and that's great, but I just like to see how that works, to see if you can. What I mentioned earlier, like, or in the open source room, is like, how do you bisect that and make that like a bisection point testable? And what I mean by that is, how do I, like, if I just want to test like one little piece of that, the logic in there, do I have to set up like the highest order event streams? Like, what does that look like? So I have a lot of functions that take event streams and produce other event streams. So to test, I don't know. I'd have to see what this looks like.
Why would you replace the application state with streams? I still don't understand what's the appeal in that. I think that streams make sense on the boundaries of the system, so you can process data before it gets committed to the application state, but I don't understand how building application state on top of streams make any sense. Really. We should probably support it, but only as a like preprocessor for data before it comes in, not, I don't know.
See, I like the Redux thing, and admittedly I'm not very familiar with it, but where it's sort of like both ends of it. It's into the state as a stream and out of the state as a stream, and into the view layer as a stream and out of the view layer as a stream. And so all the user actions go into the state, which produces state update events or whatever, and those events go into the view, and then the display is the side effect, right? I think that's a cool pattern.
Sorry, can you say that again? Like you're saying that...
Just, like the view layer, whatever it is, sends like user events into the state, which then whatever it does, and then just spits out, these state updates, which go to the view layer, which then just display those state updates.
Yeah, the problem with that is it just, again, what happens, and this is the problem that I'm talking about, is it's very hard to bisect that, because essentially everything gets put up into your like big top huge state object that runs the whole page, and all your logic is shoved there. And you can't have little bits of encapsulated logic that you assemble into something bigger. It makes it rather hard to do that.
Well, I don't think it does make it hard to do that. And I mean, you'd still have your composable states, but you end up with two different sets of them, right? You have your composable bits that make up your big application state, and all it does is, you basically compose everything there out of little things that are easy to test, because you send in a event and then.
No, but a lot of times you have to have your whole root application state mocked up to get all those little derived.
No, I don't think you do, right? It's just like everything. You make sure that your component works, and then you assume it will continue to work, so you only have to check the higher levels at that point. I don't think you ever need to well, maybe as some sort of test, you need to send like an event into the top layer and then spit out the top.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You almost all
I don't think you do always have to do that, as I'm saying. I'm saying maybe you would, but you could compose the little pieces and assume everything under the layer you're currently working with. Just assume it works because it's also tested. And then your view would do the same thing, right? You'd have the same thing on the other side, but different, where your view layer would have all these little unit parts.
It doesn't, that breaks down in and this is even talking with people through give the presentations at JavaScript Chicago. It breaks down when you start having data that is effectively shared between both. If you had the biggest example is or the most common example is the to-dos due today and critical to-dos. And if you want to make those two things independent widgets, you have to essentially get that event stream of the user changing one of the to-dos always has to go up to the highest level, the coordinating component. And
it should go up there. Why should it go up there? if it's common data.
Because essentially once you start having
Shared
common
state,
data, you can't put that like in the model layer, which like what CanJS does, which is in my opinion much nicer. Like you can have the model instead of something that's associated with an element, you can have something that's pure data, shouldn't really necessarily have to associate itself with an element, and can be managed there in kind of a side track to all of the other logic of the application. Right? You're not forcing the user to like listen to a to-do event stream has changed from a child component, then update the source. Like
you just produce an action, and action is mutating the global state, and then it trickles down to all components. It's not. There are no exactly streams there.
Well, sure, but that's still a signal, right? Like call it stream,
Yeah,
call it.
Still, I mean, it's an action that user does. I think that it's a good thing that it has a name and it's explicit, like user marked to do as important, and then you have that logic inside of a function that handles that user action. So it's not some changing of header on the model. I don't know. It's a global action that the user can do in the application. I don't see that as a problem.
You don't see the having to force the global container to have methods like that as a way
No,
to.
it should be a function that gets global container as an argument and returns a new version of a global container, basically. Or it knows how to mutate a global container.
Yeah.
It should not be on the global container. Global container should be data only, not the behavior, in my opinion.
I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. In normal relay or whatever apps, like the subcomponent would essentially produce an event that the parent component would listen to. The parent component would see that, update the state, which is essentially their data, and then
It's not actually a component. It's completely divorced from components. It's just a domain logic that operates on global shared state.
Okay, so there's logic that operates on global shared state.
Yes.
Right.
And
but can you see how like every time you have like you're having to build those methods every single time, and there's no like in some ways it's this example here where you really where's my like well you can't have limits in scope. Like everything is essentially going up to the parent, and the parent then it reflushes everything else. And that just, in my opinion, it's just like I see it forcing you. Everything goes into that, and it's hard to have.
That's how React and the whole Flux thing works. I don't think that's what FRP. FRP doesn't make that necessary. That React makes that necessary because it has async rendering.
What?
I said React makes that necessary because its rendering is async, so you can't like do synchronous stuff inside of a component. So you have to kind of push everything into like a separate layer.
Well, it's just because also it doesn't have observables. You can't like have, you can't have a piece of like there's really like no understanding of shared data changes without having to go up to the parent.
Right.
Even though it can change because the data is.
Right, but I agree with what Matthew's saying at the same time. It's not an FRP thing. That's just like a Redux React architecture thing.
Yeah. How did we get on this track? Where were we? Where did we?
I don't know, but the only thing I would want to say is like, and not to change the subject, but
I remember where we were.
I like the idea of the view, and where the view takes a bunch of observables of some sort, these streams, and the display is the side effect, and then it also sends off the user events like that you can subscribe to, because then that allows for like this cool thing, and then the components can also be that way. They can take in observables, and when that end event comes, you can unbind everything because that's not going to change anymore. You got your end event, so But meanwhile, you just change the display and send user events, and that's how like a component and a template and the whole app can all behave exactly the same. And that's just kind of a cool pattern that I think people like. And that's where I'd like to see CanJS have something. I mean, like
I guess
said,
I don't know what
everybody
that pattern looks like from the perspective of the template producing a stream.
Well, well, it would produce a stream of user events, right? So it would have to be something along the lines of each component needs to like, emit its user events, and then the template has to emit its user events or whatever, and then eventually that gets to the top layer, and then that emits. I say emits, but that's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. And then that can be subscribed to. The top layer can be subscribed to. But
I mean, we kind of already have that with view model bindings.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. Like, this is really close, and it feels like all the concepts are there, and especially if you add in that.
Why does it? I guess why does it have to be like? Can you trigger events on a stream from the outside?
No.
No. Why do you ask?
Well, like, so what we have right now is we have method callbacks that happen when when some kind of view model property changes. You can call some method somewhere else, right? To do what you're talking about, in some ways there is an event stream, right? But you have to coordinate between event streams. So what does that what does that look like? That let's say I've got some child component and it's producing player on fire. It's got a player on fire stream or something like that. And the parent component wants to somehow get that to make a spinning red flame or something like that. If some other state is true, like I don't know, cheat code's enabled or something like that, right? So it wants to combine its own kind of data with a stream coming up from the child component. What does that coordination point look like? How do you say, okay, well, this I want to get from my child, and I want to.
So you get the child stream. The child stream returns that to you somehow.
I mean, do we do like parent?
I think
stuff?
it's. Huh?
Is it like hey, say a player on fire, go up to something. Hold on one second.
Yeah, exactly.
Magda? Yeah. Or Pyle? Or Magda? Yeah. Okay, can she wait like 5 minutes? 5 minutes? Yeah. I mean, how do you export that? I guess is what I'm.
I don't know in Stash how you would do it.
Oh, hey, this player on fire is the input stream for the parent's player on fire? I don't know. Right? So that like the parent gets player on fire stream and it's part of some stream that it wants? I don't know.
Yeah, and then like in the parent view model or whatever, it would be like this thing equals, player on fire dot map whatever dot filter whatever, and then that would be its result would be a new stream.
I didn't hear what you said.
Could then expose. Oh, am I muted?
No, had my headphones were broken for a second.
But yeah, I think exactly that, right? So now player on fire is a stream that the parent now has, and then it's, some attribute of itself would be fiery something, and fiery something would be player on fire dot map dot filter something, so that it ends up with a result. And then whenever that thing triggers, it changes its displays. It subscribes to itself for a side effect. And also,
to me, this would require a little bit of that dynamic ability for, because player on fire stream might not exist immediately. you would need to be like, well, does the stream, once the stream is actually here, then...
Why doesn't it exist?
Because typically we create the parent before we create its children, so the parent would probably, its organizational structures would start like becoming alive, its streams, before the child. I mean, one of them has to go first, and either way, one is gonna, if you have bidirectional streams where parents can use their child streams and child's parents can also pass them some other data to their child as streams, then you have a chicken egg problem. Unless like you explicitly say there are some class of streams here that are parent to child, and there's some other class of streams that are only child to parent. So then you can maybe make things work, but I think it's not an impossible thing to make a stream that can respond to streams dynamically. I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of thing exists.
I think what you would, unless I'm mistaken, I think what you'd do is you'd set up your like stream thing, and then you would give it a source stream at some point. That's sort of the dynamic part. But once you've given it your source stream, I don't think you can change that source stream.
I bet
you have
you
to
can.
just create a new stream.
I bet you can.
Maybe.
I bet there's got to be, just because promises you can do this. Like promises, if you think about it, that promise exists before it takes on the value of anything returned inside the then callback, right? Like it takes on the value of whatever internal thing you're returning if it's a promise, and they get wired together. I don't know. If they can do it and computes can do it, I bet someone solved this problem with streams. Anyways, I guess I would say like here's I guess if Matthew and Adam and other people are looking to do this, like I support this. I guess it would be good to take some of these common examples and just write up pseudocode. Like, hey, it doesn't have to work, but this is how this could look, and especially kind of playing nice with other things. Oh, we could have this event stream kind of thing here, and okay, here's how, you know, if children could kind of produce event streams that parents would want to know about. Here's how you could kind of wire up some basic examples.
Yeah, I in my forum post, like I thought maybe I didn't get this point across, but I think it has to change. Like we're still thinking about it in like a template-driven world, where I don't think this is template-driven anymore. Like templates are a piece of data that's returned by a component. So I'd like to define a component as a function that it returns a template. Maybe it returns other stuff too. Like in order to set up child and parent, maybe it has to return, it returns an object which includes the template, or not returns a template, but returns the result of the template document fragment, and then it returns like some streams that the parent needs.
I would be well. I don't know really what that means, but I would say that.
Well, let me explain.
Well, I would say that no matter what you think components eventually need to get, I think there's undoubtedly integration points that need to be explored and worked on. And the other thing I would say is that to get too far away from template kind of driven development, I think is not a super good idea, just because in the end we're producing HTML, and that's what designers understand. That's just like the orchestration level of HTML in general. I'm wary of getting too far away from that. But Matthew, I do think, to make this happen, I want to avoid having to like rewrite components, and like I definitely think there's some ways to make both systems work?
I think when you make compromises like that, you're going to wind up with something that like no one really likes. Like people who like the component approach, the model view model approach, like that's already good. It already works. But I think one of the problems we've had recently is that like we're trying to like smash JavaScript into HTML, and on the flip side, JSX tries to smash HTML into JavaScript. And I think they're both kind of wrong. But that's not really,
that doesn't help either argument either way.
It doesn't help. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, I think this fits nicely with the JSX approach. That if we're thinking about going down that way.
But I'm not thinking about non-observable based.
No, I am not either. I mean, event streams are observable, so
yeah.
I'm not. That's not my idea either.
Okay, so, and like I said, I really do care about the modularity aspect, and I think that in the end you need I do think custom elements are a great thing. I think that's settled. If client component doesn't need, it supports something called a view model property, and it supports also something called like a streams property or something else like that. We can always make those kind of things happen. But like I said, CanJS and our technology is about incremental changes and kind of working our user base through these kind of shifts. And I think it's just important that we make those bridges. So I would say, fine, if you want to start with here's a dream scenario for how FRP could look in a custom element situation with kind of things are broken down and modular and still testable, and you want to start there and write pseudocode for that, then fine. But eventually I do think that we need to say, like, okay, well, here's the intermediate. Here's how we get there. Or here's how these two worlds can play ball. So if people want to migrate an existing app to it, that this is kind of possible.
That's fair.
So I guess I would say for you guys to, if that's the approach that you want to take, then do it, and start working towards that, like GIS and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, for me, and one of the reasons why I didn't really want to talk about this today is because I think this is like far down the line stuff. For me personally, I thought I would want everything that's on the roadmap that you put on the roadmap before I would want this.
Yeah, I do think even for me, I do like the idea conceptually that we make it easier for people to do stuff like this a little bit. I think that would make. I think that is to me, a really good intermediate step, like to say, hey, well, you can derive, maybe you're still setting some values and you're setting like property, like one child can talk directly to it. You're still setting properties on view models, but then everything from that point is derived. You really have no reason from the view model to any other value related to that view model to ever be calling .atter for the most part. You can do a lot of stuff if you have this.
Well, what I'd really like, I'd like that, but then I'd also like, I don't want to define any click handlers in my templates at all. I want to define those in the view model somehow. Like that would be an intermediate step for me. It's like, how can I say that I care about this button's value? Or not this button's value, this input's value.
But you have to have a click handler somewhere. Somewhere you have to say click.
That's controls. We had those.
Controls. Bring back controls.
Wait. Somewhere you have to have a click.
Well,
guys,
no.
I gotta go.
The word click has to exist.
Well, the
How do
word
you know?
click has, yes. But I want it in the view model is what I'm saying. I don't want it in the template.
What? Are you crazy, Matthew? Oh my God. That to me sounds a little crazy.
A coup.
Mikhail had to leave after that one. No, why?
Yeah.
Why? But I mean, that's what we're talking about. Is like
Because the view model should not really know anything about the DOM. It should not be related.
Yeah, I
to
know.
what you're listening on. If you change it to right click or like tap or something like that, the method should be kind of method based or whatever it is. It should be not knowing about elements and not knowing about DOM events, I guess. I like that concept.
That's true. Then that's I don't know how we reconcile that with the fact that I don't know how we reconcile that with how it becomes.
Sorry, hold on one second. I gotta move. Sorry, I'm getting kicked out of my office. NBA, you can. While you wait, you can look at Scottie Pippen.
I've been looking it up anyways.
Scottie Pippen doing crazy.
Who was it? Was it? I think it was Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, and Ron Harper. I think Ron Harper was the third guy. I have to look that up.
Hold on. What? Oh, I can still be in my office? Huh? Oh, okay. All right. This is a weird spot to work from. Oh well.
I'm trying to find out who the third guy was. Do you remember?
Wait, on what?
There's always on NBA Jam. There's always three of them, right? Three.
For what year? I guess it would be.
I guess I'm probably just thinking the first one.
What year was the first one? The first year the Bulls won the championship?
Yeah, it was like '93. I think it might have been Ron Harper.
Oh, okay.
For some reason.
Maybe. BJ Armstrong.
It could have been.
So I'm really curious, Matthew. What did you mean by like having the DOM events in the view model or whatever?
Well, because with event streams, I mean, event streams are defined in JavaScript. They're not defined in templates. So where can I create an event stream that, accumulates clicks or accumulates the value of an input? Like, where do I put that code? Maybe it's not the view model.
Well, couldn't we just have like there's got to be. Yeah, you need to say like, hey, this is a source stream, but can't you just like hold on? Couldn't you just say on click, this is that click stream? So you could be like, you could say click foo click stream or like +1 click stream, and then you would that would be a source to some other stream.
Yeah.
Right, you would just essentially label all you're doing is labeling your template with the event and like what you want the stream name to be or something.
So it sets that stream on the view model.
Somewhere, it sets it on something, yeah. I wonder if CanComputes could be used to create these streams that can dynamically change their streams, source streams. That'd be fun. Crazy. But yeah, I would say just start with example code. That's the best.
Can you throw your Sublime into a gist or something so I can?
Yeah,
I'm actually working on this for probably a long time.
That's fine. Other people in the community can pick it up who are watching this video.
All three of them.
Hey, gotta start somewhere, right? Cool. Awesome.
All right.
Anything else? Okay. Thanks, guys. It was a good discussion. I think that was fun, right? Right, Matthew?
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
All right. Okay, bye.
All right. See you.